My coworker found out I was in the hospital before my own mother did. She sent flowers at 9 a.m. My mother called at 2 p.m. to ask if I could still make it to my sister's engagement party that weekend. I've been unconscious on an operating table at 9 a.m. The accident happened on a Tuesday in February, 6:22 in the morning, on the ramp merging onto I-95 outside of Charlotte. I was always on the road early. That was just how my life worked. I had a 7:30 meeting with a client in Raleigh, and if I left by 6, I could miss the worst of the commute and stop for gas and still be early. I've been doing the same drive twice a week for 3 years. I knew every exit, every rough patch of asphalt, every spot where the shoulder narrowed. I did not know the pickup truck that had been driving for 19 hours straight would drift across the center line at exactly the moment I was passing it. I woke up in a room I didn't recognize. Everything was white. There was a machine beeping to my left. A nurse was writing something on a whiteboard near the door, and she had her back to me. And for a long moment I just lay there trying to understand why I couldn't move my right arm without something pulling tight across my chest. She turned around when I made a sound. "Oh, good, you're back." She smiled like she meant it. "You're at Carolina's Medical. You've been out for a few hours. Can you tell me your name?" I told her. "Good. Do you know what day it is?" I didn't. She told me it was Tuesday. She told me I'd been in a car accident. She told me I had 4 broken ribs, a fractured collarbone, a collapsed lung they'd already re-inflated, and a concussion. She told me I'd had surgery to repair some internal bleeding that had scared the surgical team more than they'd initially let on. She said it calmly, the way nurses say things when they've said them 1,000 times and they know that calm is the only useful thing to be. "Your emergency contact was notified," she said. "Your coworker, a woman named Becca, has already called 3 times. She sent flowers. They're at the nurses' station." I blinked. What about my family? "The nurses' face didn't change. We called the number you had listed. Someone answered. They said they'd pass along the message." They'd pass along the message. I had 3 broken ribs, a fractured collarbone, and a collapsed lung, and someone in my family had said they'd pass along the message. I found out later it was my sister who answered. She'd been on the phone with her fiancé's mother at the time, finalizing details for the engagement party happening that Saturday, the one at the rental hall in Asheville, that I had put $6,000 on my credit card for because my parents said they were a little tight right now, and my sister had cried when they told her she'd have to downsize the venue. So I'd said, "Don't worry, I'll cover it." Because that's what I did. That's what I'd always done. My mother called at 2:13 p.m. I know the time because I'd been staring at the ceiling for 2 hours by then, in and out of a fog from the pain medication, and when the nurse handed me my phone, I looked at the screen just to have something to focus on. "Honey, oh my goodness, are you okay? We heard you were in some kind of accident." "Some kind of accident," I said. "Well, what happened exactly? Are you going to be okay for Saturday?" I held the phone away from my ear and looked at it for a second. Just looked at it. "Mom, I had surgery this morning." I know, and I'm so glad you're okay. But the party is Saturday and Kylie is counting on you. You did the whole venue deposit and the coordinator needs the final head count from you, because you're the one who set up the account. From you because you're the one who set up the account. I almost died today. Silence. "Well, honey, you didn't though. You're fine. You sound fine." I was not fine. I had a tube in my chest until that afternoon. I had a bruise shaped like a seatbelt running from my left shoulder to my right hip. I couldn't take a deep breath without the pain making my eyes water. I was alone in a hospital room in Charlotte, and my mother was asking about a head count. My father called an hour later. He was warmer, at least at first. He said he was relieved I was okay, that he'd been worried, that this was a real scare. Then he said, "Listen, your mother and I were thinking, do you think you'll be discharged before Saturday? Because we could use your help with setup." I didn't answer that. "Or even just the coordination stuff. You know how these things go. Your sister doesn't have the head for logistics." "I had internal bleeding, Dad." "I know, sweetheart, and we're very glad it wasn't worse. But Kylie has been looking forward to this for months. You know how important this is to her." I knew how important everything was to Kylie. I'd known my entire life. My sister was 4 years younger than me and had always been, according to my parents, the sensitive one, the creative one. the one who felt things more deeply, which meant that when things got hard, I handled them, and when things got good, we all celebrated her. When I graduated from UNC with a finance degree, my parents gave me a card and took me to Olive Garden. When Kylie graduated from her 2-year cosmetology program, they rented a party room at a restaurant and invited 40 people. When I got my first real job and moved into my own apartment, I did it alone with a rented U-Haul and 2 friends from work. When Kylie moved into an apartment last year, my parents spent a weekend helping her set up furniture and my mom repainted the kitchen because Kylie didn't like the color. I told myself it was fine. I told myself this is just how families work sometimes, that I was the older one, the responsible one, that it wasn't a competition. I had a good job. I had my own life. I didn't need the same things Kylie needed. The problem was, I'd been lying to myself for so long I'd started to believe it. My coworker Becca showed up Tuesday evening with food from a Thai place she knew I liked. She sat with me for 2 hours. She didn't ask about head counts or coordination or whether I'd be mobile the weekend. She just sat there, and when I started crying a little from the pain medication wearing off, she held my hand and didn't say anything, which was the right thing to do. "Your family coming?" she asked before she left. "They're busy," I said. She looked at me for a moment. "Okay," she said. And then she didn't say anything else about it, which I appreciated more than I can explain. Wednesday, my parents didn't come. My mother texted twice, once to ask for the name of the venue coordinator, once to tell me that the florist had a question about the centerpiece arrangements. My sister called to tell me she'd found the most amazing dress, and she wished I could see it in person. I was lying in a hospital bed with a chest tube. She called to tell me about a dress. Wednesday night I couldn't sleep. The hospital was quiet except for the sound of the hallway and the machines. And I lay there thinking about the $6,000 on my credit card and the $3,200 I'd lent my brother-in-law last spring for a car repair that he'd never paid back, and the $800 I'd sent my mom when her water heater broke, and the $1,500 I'd given Kylie when she was between jobs last year. I'd never added it up before. I added it up in my head that night in the dark, lying in a hospital bed, and the number was somewhere north of $12,000 in the past 3 years alone. $12,000 I'd given to people who were currently worried about whether I'd be well enough to help with party setup by Saturday. Thursday morning, a woman I didn't know left something at the nurse's station for me. I didn't find out until Thursday night. My day nurse mentioned it almost in passing. "Oh, someone dropped off a card for you earlier. Didn't want to come in, but asked how you were doing." "Who was it?" She shook her head. "She didn't say. Just left the card and asked if you were comfortable." It was a card with a watercolor painting of mountains on the front. Inside, in careful handwriting, "Thinking of you. You're not alone, even when it feels that way." No name, no return address. I didn't recognize the handwriting. I asked the nurse if she remembered what the woman looked like. Older, maybe late 50s, early 60s, gray hair pulled back. She had a nice coat on. She seemed... The nurse paused, looking for the word. She seemed like she'd been somewhere like this before, like she knew how hospitals work. I didn't know who that was. I didn't have grandparents anymore. My dad's parents had passed when I was in college. My mom's mother died when I was 12. I had one aunt on my mom's side who lived in Portland and who I hadn't spoken to in years because she and my mother had some falling out I'd never fully understood. I thought about that card for a long time. Thursday night, my mother called again. Kylie was overwhelmed by the final details. Could I call the venue from my hospital room and confirm the linen order? I had the account login. "Mom, I had a collapsed lung 3 days ago." "I know, honey, you keep saying that, but you're feeling better, aren't you? The doctors said you were improving." "That doesn't mean I should be handling event logistics. It's just one phone call. Your sister is really stressed." I hung up. Just ended the call while she was still talking. It was the first time I'd ever done that to her, and my hands were shaking afterward, which told me more about my own life than I wanted to think about. Friday, my father sent a text. "Your mother is upset. You need to call her back. This is a hard time for the whole family." I stared at that text for a while. The whole family. I was the one in the hospital, and it was a hard time for the whole family. I didn't call back. Friday afternoon, the same woman came again. This time my evening nurse told me, unprompted, like she'd been thinking about it. That woman was here again. The one who left the card. She stayed longer this time. She was in the hallway outside your room for a few minutes. She didn't come in. In the hallway? She was just standing there, looking at your door. Then she left another envelope at the station. The second envelope had two things in it, a gift card to an audiobook service and another note. I'm not sure you'd want to hear from me, but I can't seem to stay away. I hope you're sleeping okay. That handwriting, I kept trying to place it. Saturday came. My family was in Asheville for Kylie's engagement party. I know because Kylie posted 47 Instagram stories over the course of the evening. My parents were in every other photo. My mom in a blue dress I'd never seen before. My dad laughing with my brother-in-law's family. The venue looked beautiful. The centerpieces looked beautiful. The cake was a 4-layer lavender situation that I had no idea had been ordered. Nobody called to check on me. It was my day nurse. Her name was Deandra, and she'd been the most straightforward person I'd encountered in that building, who finally said something. She came in for my evening vitals, and I must have looked the way I felt, because she sat down for a moment instead of moving on. "Your family at the party?" she asked. "Engagement party, for my sister. And you're here." "And I'm here." She was quiet for a moment. "You have people who care about you," she said finally. "That woman who keeps leaving things, she cares. Whoever she is." "I don't know who she is." Deandra tilted her head slightly. "You could ask. She's been here 3 nights running now. She's in the waiting area right now, actually. She comes around 8. I looked at the clock. It was 8:15. "She's here right now?" "She comes and doesn't go in. Every night. Tonight I almost asked her myself, but I thought you should be the one to decide." I don't know why I said what I said next. Maybe it was the medication. Maybe it was 4 days of lying in a bed alone while my family coordinated floral arrangements. Maybe it was just that I'd run out of reasons to wait. "Can you ask her to come in?" The door opened about 4 minutes later. She was exactly what the nurse had described. Late 50s. Gray hair. A good coat. But up close, what I noticed first was her eyes. She had my father's eyes. I'd always thought my dad had unusual eyes, a particular shade of dark green that I'd apparently inherited, and this woman had the same ones. She also had the same way of standing like she was braced for something. "Hi," she said. She stopped just inside the door. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me." "Who are you?" I said. She let out a breath. "My name is Vera. I'm your father's older sister. Your aunt. You probably don't remember me. You were about 8 the last time I saw you." I didn't remember her, but the eyes. "Why don't I remember you?" She came further into the room and sat down in the chair by the window. She held her coat in her lap. "Because your mother and I had a serious disagreement when you were young, and she decided I wasn't welcome around the family anymore. Your father, my brother, he went along with it. He's always gone along with things." "What was the disagreement about?" She was quiet for a moment, looking at her hands. "You," she said. "It was about you." The room felt strange. "What do you mean?" "I watched you growing up," she said carefully, "and I was worried. I could see what was happening. How you were always the one who handled things. Always the one who was expected to be fine. Always the one who came second when Kylie needed something. I said something to your mother about it when you were 8. I said I thought it wasn't fair, that they were treating you like a little adult when you were still a little girl." She paused. "She didn't take it well." "They cut you out because you said something about how they treated me." "They told me I was causing problems, that I was jealous and interfering. I pushed back a few more times over the years. Cards, phone calls, a letter once that I don't think ever reached you. Eventually it became clear I wasn't welcome." She looked up at me, but I still knew people who knew people. "And I kept up with you as best I could from the outside. I thought about the card with the mountains, the audiobook gift card, the careful handwriting. You've been following my life. Watching, making sure you were okay." She said it simply, without apology. "When I heard about the accident, a mutual friend of mine knew your father and called me. I got in my car and drove down. I didn't plan to come in. I just needed to know you were all right." "You drove down from where?" "Richmond." Richmond was 4 hours. She had driven 4 hours, 3 nights in a row, to stand outside my hospital room and not come in. I didn't know what to do with that. Why didn't you just come in? Because I wasn't sure you'd want me here. I've been a stranger to you for 20 years. I didn't think I had the right to walk into your hospital room and introduce myself. She looked at her hands again. But I also couldn't leave. Not with you in there alone. I was 31 years old, and I was crying in a hospital bed in front of a woman I didn't remember meeting, and I couldn't stop. It hurt my ribs to cry. I cried anyway. My family is at a party right now, I said when I could talk again. An engagement party I paid for. I paid for the venue. I paid the deposit. I set up the vendor accounts. And nobody called today. I know, she said. I've given them over $12,000 in the last 3 years. I've never once said no. I've never missed a thing they needed from me. I paused. I had a collapsed lung, and my mother called to ask about linen orders. Vera looked at me steadily. I know. I'm known for a long time. You've been carrying all of this, for all of them, for years. I don't know how to stop. Yes, you do. You hung up on your mother. That was a start. I laughed, which hurt. You don't have to do anything dramatic, she said. You just have to decide that you matter as much as they do, that your recovery matters, that your money matters, that your time matters. She paused. You almost died this week. I want you to sit with that. Not in a morbid way. In the way where you ask yourself, what would have been different if you hadn't made it? Who would have handled it? Who would have been devastated? I didn't answer. Becca, she said quietly. The woman who sent the flowers, the nurses who are actually here. She was right. I knew she was right. I'd known it for days. When I was discharged Sunday morning, one day after the engagement party, during which I received 4 texts from my mother about whether I'd talked to the venue about returning the deposit on the unused cocktail napkins, Vera drove me home. My mother called while we were on the road. I let it ring. She left a voicemail that started with, I hope you're feeling better, and moved, within 40 seconds, to we need to talk about the rehearsal dinner budget because Kylie's fiancé's family isn't going to contribute as much as we thought, and we were thinking you might be willing. I deleted it. Vera helped me get inside my apartment, got me set up on the couch with everything I'd need within arm's reach, went and got groceries and came back and put them away. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't need anything. She just did the things that needed doing, which is something I'd been doing for my family for my entire adult life and had somehow never had done for me. You should stay with me, she said before she left, in Richmond, while you recover. You can't do stairs, you shouldn't be driving. It doesn't make sense for you to be here alone. My family will probably come, I said. And then I heard myself say it and felt the weight of how much I was still hoping that was true. Vera was quiet for a moment. They might, and if they do, that would be good. She left the number on a notepad on my kitchen counter. But just in case. They didn't come that week. My mother called twice, once about the rehearsal dinner, once to let me know that Kylie had found a photographer she loved, but he was a little pricey. Did I think I could help with that? I told her I was still recovering from surgery. She said she knew. She just thought I might be able to transfer something small. It wasn't a big ask. I transferred nothing. I called Vera on a Thursday and told her I'd take her up on the offer. She drove down that Saturday morning, helped me pack a bag, got me into her car, drove me back to Richmond. She had a guest room that had clearly been set up recently. There was a new pillow, a stack of books she thought I might like, a small Bluetooth speaker because she knew some people liked ambient sound when they were sleeping somewhere new and wasn't sure which kind I was. How did you know I liked to read? I asked. You always had a book when you were little, she said. You used to carry them everywhere. Your mother used to get frustrated because you'd read at the dinner table. I'd forgotten that about myself. I stayed for 6 weeks. It was the longest I'd gone without working more than 8 hours in a day in probably 4 years. It was the longest I'd gone without sending money to someone. It was the longest I'd gone without checking my phone every 20 minutes in case someone needed something. It was uncomfortable at first. I didn't know what to do with time that didn't have a task attached to it. I'd sit on Vera's back porch in the afternoon and feel vaguely guilty for just existing without being productive. You're allowed to just sit, Vera told me once. It feels strange. It does at first. Then it feels normal. Then it feels necessary. She was right. Around week 3, something shifted. I started sleeping past 6. I started finishing the books she'd left for me. I started writing in a journal I'd found in a drawer, which I hadn't done since I was 23. I started recognizing the feeling of wanting something, a specific kind of coffee, a particular TV show, a long walk, and just having it, without calculating first whether I could justify the time or the cost. My mother called 8 times while I was there. I answered twice. The first time, she said she was glad I was recovering, and then asked whether I was planning to come home for Kylie's bridal shower planning meeting. I told her I was in Richmond. She didn't ask why. The second time, she told me she was a little hurt that I hadn't been more available. I told her I'd been recovering from surgery, and that I'd call when I was ready. She said, "I just feel like we've been losing you lately." I didn't say anything to that for a moment. "I feel like I've been lost for a long time," I said finally. "I'm just now finding my way back." She didn't understand what I meant, but I did. My sister called once. She left a voicemail that was mostly about the bridal shower, and then said, almost as an afterthought, "I hope you're doing okay." I texted back that I was recovering well. She didn't respond. Kylie texted 2 weeks later, "Hey, so I know you've been dealing with stuff, but the bridal shower venue requires a credit card on file, and you have better credit than me and Mom. Could you be the one to hold the reservation? You don't have to pay for it. Just put your card down." I read that text 4 times. Then I typed, "I'm not able to do that. I'm still recovering and I need to be careful with my finances right now. I hope you find another option." She didn't respond for 3 days. When she did, it was, "I just think it's really hurtful that you're not being more supportive right now. This is the most important year of my life." I did not respond. My father emailed me in week 5. It was a long email. Longer than I expected. He said he knew things had been hard. He said he was sorry I'd been hurt, and that he wished he'd come to the hospital. He said the party had gone well, but he'd thought about me the whole time, which I genuinely don't know if I believed. He said he missed me. He said he hoped I'd come home soon and that things could go back to normal. Back to normal? He wanted things to go back to normal. I sat with that email for a day before I responded. When I did, I kept it short. I said I was glad he'd reached out. I said I was doing better. I said I was doing better. I said I wasn't sure what normal meant anymore, but that when I was ready to talk, I would reach out. He said, "Fair enough. Love you." I believed that part, actually. In his way, I believed it. By the time I went back to Charlotte, I was technically cleared medically, but the real change was something else. I drove home instead of having Vera drive me, because I could, and I pulled into my parking garage and sat in the car for a moment before going up. I had 32 texts from family members I'd left unread. I had 4 voicemails I hadn't listened to. I had a request from my sister for access to an online account I'd set up for a vendor she was using, which was technically in my name, and which she now wanted me to transfer ownership of. I called the vendor and had it transferred to her own name. I didn't tell her I did it. I just handled it the way I handled everything. Except this time, I handled it once and then closed it out and never thought about it again. I went back to work 2 weeks later. My manager had checked in on me regularly while I was gone, not about work, just to see how I was doing. When I walked in, she hugged me and said she was glad I was okay, and then did not, even once, ask me if I was ready to jump back into the quarterly projections. "Take the week to settle in," she said. "We handled it." They had handled it. Life had continued without me. The work had gotten done. The clients were fine. Nobody had needed me to sacrifice anything. I thought about how many extra hours I'd worked for the past 4 years thinking I was indispensable. Thinking that if I stopped, something would collapse. Thinking that being necessary was the same thing as being valued. It wasn't. About 3 months after the accident, I had a direct conversation with my mother. Not on the phone. She'd driven down to Charlotte, which I think was her version of a grand gesture, showing up without calling first on a Sunday afternoon. I let her in. We sat at my kitchen table. She said she'd been thinking a lot, and she wanted to understand what had happened. I told her. I told her about the headcount call, the linen question, the party setup, the blazer, the photographer, the rehearsal dinner, the credit card request, all of it. I told her about lying in a hospital bed the night of the engagement party, watching Kylie's Instagram stories and receiving 0 phone calls. I told her about the $12,000. She got very quiet. "I didn't think about it the way you're describing," she said finally. "I know. We were going to come. You didn't come." Silence. "I'm not saying this to punish you," I told her. "I'm saying it because I need you to understand what happened from where I was sitting. Because if we're going to have a real relationship going forward, it can't be the kind we've had." I paused. I can't be the person everyone comes to when they need something and disappears when I do. I can't keep doing that. She started crying. I let her. When she stopped, she said, "I know we rely on you too much. I know we do. You rely on me for everything. We'll do better. I need you to, because I'm not in a position to keep giving the way I have been, financially, emotionally. I have to take care of myself first now. That might feel different, it might be hard, but that's what it's going to look like." She nodded. She didn't say much after that. She left after another hour and hugged me longer than she usually did at the door. I don't know if anything actually changed. Some things did. My father started calling more often, just to talk, which he'd never done before. My mother stopped looping me into vendor logistics. Kylie still asked for things sometimes, still expected a certain amount, but I'd learned to say no in a way that didn't feel like I was tearing something apart. It was just a word that meant, "Not this time." And the first time I said it and meant it and didn't call back later to reverse it, something in my chest came loose. Vera and I talk every week now. She drives down every couple of months, or I drive up to Richmond, and we have dinner and talk for hours about everything. Her life, her friendships, books we've read, things we've thought about. She told me once that she'd been waiting for years to have this, that she'd hoped and not expected. And then one day I was calling her from a couch in Charlotte and something she'd been saving up for a long time was finally being spent. I still think about that Tuesday in February sometimes. The pickup truck, the merge ramp, the way the morning had seemed completely ordinary, and then wasn't. I think about how close it was. I think about what it would have meant if I hadn't woken up. Who would have sorted out the vendor accounts? Who would have managed the credit card? Who would have been the one to finally close out the spreadsheet I kept labeled Family Misc, where I tracked every transfer and loan and covered expense, none of which had ever been paid back? I deleted that spreadsheet. I started a different one. It tracks things I've spent on myself. The weekend trip to the mountains last fall, the new desk I bought for my home office, the writing class I signed up for, because I'd always wanted to try, and there was no longer any reason not to. The numbers in that one are smaller, but they're mine. Vera asked me once, not long ago, if I regretted any of it. The years of giving, the money, the time. I thought about it honestly. "I regret believing that was what I had to do to be loved," I said. "I don't regret who I was. I just needed to learn I could be that person and still put myself first." She smiled. "That's the thing about being the responsible one," she said. "You're so good at taking care of everyone else that nobody ever teaches you how to take care of yourself." "You did," I said. "I tried." She picked up her coffee. "I just had to wait for you to let me." I keep coming back to the moment I added up the numbers in my head. 4 days post-surgery, lying in a hospital bed in Charlotte, unable to take a full breath without wincing, running the math in the dark because there was nothing else to do. $12,000. Given freely, never asked back, never acknowledged. And not once, in all those years of giving, did I stop to ask why it never felt like enough. Why there was always another ask right around the corner. Why I kept saying yes, even when the answer cost me something I couldn't afford. The honest answer is that I confused being needed with being loved. I thought if I was useful enough, reliable enough, if I never said no and never made it difficult, they would eventually treat me the way I treated them. That's not how it worked. That's not how it works with people who've learned they can take without consequence. What I was doing wasn't generosity. It was a trade I'd set up without realizing it. And the other side never intended to hold up their end. What I had to figure out, slowly and painfully, is the difference between what's right and what's easy. The right thing isn't always keeping the peace. Sometimes the right thing is the harder thing, saying no. letting someone be disappointed, refusing to fund a life that isn't yours just because you can. I had the values all along. I knew what fairness looked like. I just kept applying them to everyone except myself. That's a kind of moral failure too, even if nobody ever names it that way. Vera showing up the way she did. 4 hours from Richmond? 3 nights in a row. Standing outside a door she didn't feel she had the right to open. That taught me something about what real care actually looks like. It's quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with a Venmo request attached. It just shows up and stays, even when it's uncertain of its welcome. I've been surrounded by people who said they loved me and left when it got inconvenient. I didn't recognize real steadiness when it arrived because I'd never been given a chance to see it up close. The clarity didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. When I hung up on my mother for the first time and my hands shook for an hour afterward. When I texted my sister no and didn't call back to soften it. When I deleted the spreadsheet where I'd tracked every dollar I'd given away. Each one of those small decisions took something I hadn't known I had. Something I'd been spending on other people's problems for so long, I'd run it down to nothing. Building it back up took time. It took Vera's back porch and 6 weeks of sleeping past 6 and finishing books I'd started for myself and not anyone else. What I know now is that the life I was living before the accident wasn't sustainable. Not financially, not emotionally, not physically. The body eventually tells you what the mind won't admit. Mine told me at 6:22 in the morning on an interstate in February. I'd like to think I would have figured it out some other way, eventually, but I'm not sure I would have. I'm not angry anymore, most days. I understand how my family got to be the way they are, how patterns get set early, and everybody plays their role, and nobody questions it because that's just how things have always been. Understanding it doesn't mean accepting it. It means I can put it down without hating them for it. Vera asked me once if I missed who I was before. I had to think about it. I miss being able to give without calculating the cost. I miss the version of myself that hadn't yet learned what it felt like to be left alone in a hospital on a Saturday night while people I loved took pictures with champagne. But I don't miss the exhaustion. I don't miss the dread. I don't miss lying awake adding up numbers in the dark. Some things you only learn the hard way. This was mine.